Hey, are you doing, Natalie? Are you doing, Bianca?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you guys?
Hi, Dom. Hi, Nat.
I'm
Hey.
pretty good. What are you drinking out there, like, Natalie? I just saw like, you drinking something. I just want to make sure because I saw a lot of your TikTok stuff, so I just want to make sure, like, that you're just representing what you're drinking. So what is it that I just saw
You
you
know what?
drink?
This is the first time I've ever had this drink. It's a yerba mate,
Okay.
like a tea drink, and it's
Yeah.
they partnered with Protect Our Winters Canada, which a lot of snowboarders are involved with. So I saw it on the shelf and was like, I didn't know we had it here on the East. I only saw it in the West Coast, so I bought it, and now I'm trying it for the first time.
Okay, that's cool. I just want to make sure, like, what kind of drink was that? I was like, not sure.
My secret sauce. No.
Yeah. So how you been doing?
I've been doing good, enjoying the warm weather. This is actually the first time I'm inside today because I brought my laptop outside, but I wanted to make sure I had the good audio and everything in here. But I've been enjoying just sitting outside and getting some sun while I'm working.
What have you been doing today? Like all like TikTok videos? Like I see you like on my TikTok feed like everywhere. So is it what you do like in the day?
I joke with my boyfriend. I'm like, okay, we'll see ya. Bye. Have fun at work. I'm gonna just make like 3 TikToks today. So, but no, I haven't made a TikTok today. Actually, I think I made an Instagram Reels, which was like half of a TikTok I'd already recorded, and then I just recorded the first part, and then I was editing my podcast and listening to music and eating and chilling with my dog.
First time we talked, like back in I think like 2 months ago or something like that. You were telling me you were like a CrossFit athlete, and I was like, get out of here. And I was like, you're not looking like a CrossFit athlete, like because you made like competition and stuff like that. And then after that, I saw some of your like TikToks and your photos, and I was like, she's gonna crush me.
That's because of the hoodie. Like I was saying, I've just been wearing baggy snowboard hoodies all winter.
I love it. I saw some of your last TikTok. I'm a big Bianca. I'm a big follower of her. So she's always she's always the snowboarding stuff. Is that something that you do like right now? Like the tricks that you did. Is that in Ottawa?
Yeah, that was at Tremblant. So I just went on Saturday with my brother, and I had such a fun day because it brings back so many like spring memories of getting to ride there as a kid. And I'm nowhere near what I used to be. I just call myself a washed-up snowboarder, and it took me actually a long time to accept that. Like, okay, I'm never gonna do the tricks that I used to do when I was competing, but it is fun just to like mess around and do some of those. And I felt cool again, I suppose. Like there were some people at the top who were like, "Oh, that was awesome," and I was like, "Yes, I still have it."
Hey, those skills are incredible. You're like killing it out there. I was like, oh my god, I didn't know I didn't know how good you were, and I was like, oh okay, she's got the serious sauce out there. Because I do snowboard, I'm not good. Like I just like go like down and a little bit of a midi jump and stuff like that. But like the stuff you do like out there, and I know it's been a while, so it's not like you're not like practicing every day. But it's like, oh wow, that's incredible! Like you got some serious game. Who's cooler? Who's the cooler? Like is like snowboarder or cooler or skateboarders?
Oh, that's hard. I thought you were going to say snowboarders or skiers because then I would answer. My brother's a skier, so I would just say snowboarders. But you know
I
what?
would accept that in this moment, even though I've skied my entire life. I would be like, yes, I can acknowledge that you all get the better gear and get to do much more fun things, and we're just lame and take turns down the mountain.
But ski's pretty cool though. I
Yeah.
like ski.
To be fair, you know what? My brother, like him and his friends, they ride the park and they do cool stuff, and so I mean they're cool too. But they had to take influence from snowboarders to become cool again, and then now they like skiers are cool again. I don't know, but I think they can credit us.
The pain in your voice when you're like, they're cool, like kind of like.
The guys like Michael Kingsbury. We're gonna talk like Canadian stuff like right now, but the guy like
no.
Michael. Yes, Michael Kingsbury. Michael Kingsbury is like the best like ever at skiing stuff and mogul and stuff like that. So like those guys though, like they do some crazy stuff in skiing though. Like it's incredible. So I think like for them like I can see like ski's kind of cool right now. It's still cool, but there's a thing when I see like my wife, she's pretty good at snowboarding, and she does that like she goes like from side to side. That just looks so good. It's just so cool. So who's cooler, like skateboarders or snowboarders? Like, that's it.
I mean, I will say snowboarders for my own sake, but like skateboarding is so technical. Like, it's so hard. It's so underrated because your feet aren't strapped in. Like, snowboarders maybe have some higher risk. Like, you're hitting like 100-foot jumps and you can crash really hard, obviously, and you're doing like bigger tricks. But skateboarders, the technicality of it, and it's only now getting into the Olympics. So it still has like that rebel aspect to it. I mean, snowboarding does too, but it's starting to become more of like a jock thing. Mainstream. Like, it's a full sport actually now.
Yeah.
So
is it a sport though? Like, because Bianca, she knows like I'm roasting a lot of people like doing like skiing, snowboarding. I love. By the way, I love snowboarding. I love surfing. I love skateboarding. Skateboarding is like, if I could go back in life, I would be a skateboarder. Like, my kids do a lot of skateboarding, and I'm just like, I watch them. I was like, oh man, I wish I could do that, but like I can't. I just can't. But do you consider people like me going to the slope at like Tremblant? Do you consider me doing sport when I do that, or just a leisure, like guys like me?
I think still a sport, but yeah, that's a good comparison because, like, for example, when I was 17, I went out to Whistler for the first time, and I remember being at this big party. Like, the guys who kind of owned the house that I was staying at were all skiers, and they were kind of like semi-pro, and even though I was like at a training camp, they were just partying nonstop. And so they had like some of these pro snowboarders who came over, but they were pro snowboarders not competing. They were like ones who filmed street rails and kind of that kind of scene, and they were getting so heated about snowboarding because it just had gotten into the Olympics. Like, it was announced when I was there, and they were like, snowboarding isn't a sport, we're not athletes. And I just was like, I'm just closing my mouth because they don't know that I compete and like I have different views. So there is still like kind of just a separation in that sense where some people don't consider it a sport. But
even in the community, like in the snowboarding community, they don't want to be called athletes.
It's getting better. Like, I was like one of the only people who went to the gym for a long time. Like, I feel actually really confident saying that I was probably like the strongest female snowboarder, but because I spent so much time in the gym, and now it's like cool because people are realizing they're getting torn ACLs all the time. But people say it's a lifestyle, right? Like, you finished running track, you're probably not going to go back and run track just for fun. But snowboarding, skiing, like, you want to be doing that when you're 90 if you could possibly do it. But I definitely consider it a sport. I think it's just kind of the wording that gets associated is some of those people don't want to think that they're like, jocks and all they do is train. They want to think that they're rebels and just like hang out. So there's like not a war. I think those they're getting closer and closer. We've made friends.
I love that.
Do you go ahead, Bianca?
Oh, I was just gonna ask. Like, obviously, have to be the only American on the call today. Very proud to take this back seat here. But with a sport like snowboarding. So for me, I just use the term sport because you're out there, you're engaging, you're an athlete. To me, even if it's leisure, like, you're sweating. Once again, Dom and I have.
You're not sweating. That's the point. You're just not sweating.
When I ski,
really
I sweat.
cold,
I don't. Okay, even when it's like 2 degrees, and that's even Celsius, I will. But regardless, we don't need to talk about my body habits. What I was going to get into was, Natalie, how is it for you that you started in this sport very competitive, very young? And now as you're transitioning out of it, you're still able to play and engage in the sport you love, but just in a different lens. How important has that kind of been to you in this transition, and also kind of seeing yourself as an athlete, as a person, and all of these different schemas?
Yeah, it's been hard and also fun. Like, I see like how difficult that transition is for other athletes, and I definitely went through it where I was like depressed and dealing with my identity loss and all those things when I stepped aside from snowboarding. But that was because of the competition aspect of it and the level I was at. It was hard to be like, I spent a decade working on this, and now I'm not going to achieve that goal. I fell just short of the Olympics. I'm not going to ever do that. So that was really hard to deal with. And I know athletes across all sports do, but I was able to like rebuild that relationship because it did feel like a breakup. And one of the things I did in therapy was actually write a letter to snowboarding. That's something my therapist got me to do. He was like an ex-pro soccer player, so that really helped. And I realized there was a lot of resentment I held towards the sport because I didn't reach my goal. I decided to step away, and so I felt like, snowboarding had done something bad to me, when in a sense it was something I really loved. I fell out of love with it. And now I can fall in love with it again, but from a different lens of just like, hey, I just love to have fun and hang out. And so now I don't have like, when I was a kid, I would ride like 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. I was just so crazy. Now I'm like, I'll have my fun. I'm like, oh, I'm tired. I'll go inside. If it's super cold, I don't have to go out there and train. I don't have a coach saying like, you got to go and do your best tricks. And it's like -30. I can just be like, I'm going to sit in this chalet today and enjoy some hot chocolate. So that relationship is like, been rebuilt in the sense where I can just, hang out and have fun. And something I want to do too is like get into the backcountry. And, that's something that will be new for me, but I don't have to do it from a lens of like, oh, I want to be a pro backcountry rider now. I can just enjoy.
How important do you think it is so I'm an athlete who was competing at a very high level as well, and got injured and then had this breakup moment. How important, I love that your therapist made you write this letter. I think that's a beautiful idea, and I almost want to kind of go do the same after. How important do you think it is for athletes who have gone through something where they've had this monumental goal, have been so close to either step away due to injury or just the reality of what's going on at the time? How important do you think it is for them to kind of have that reckoning with the sport? To kind of look all of those years and hours and, pain, joy, everything in between in the eye and say, hey, this was XYZ for me then. Where am I going now? And how can I kind of build again?
Yeah, I think it's so important because it's similar to like any relationships. It's going to be hard for you to get into any other relationship in your life if you haven't like kind of healed from what went on in that relationship and understood that even if it was negative or some things negative happened, there were also good sides. There's a reason you got into it. There's a reason why you put that effort there. And even those negative sides or the struggles or the things that you went through, they taught you lessons and they're helping you learn these things that are going to help you propel to what's next. So now I look back and I think everything I'm doing is building off that. It wasn't that I failed and like I didn't make the Olympics. It was that falling short, there was a reason there, and I've been able to learn and heal and mature a lot faster because of that and take that into everything else that I do next.
Awesome. I love that. And that's so much of your brand now. Like, talk about like how you've incorporated that to tell other athletes it's okay to feel these things. It's okay to be open about how you feel disappointed, hurt, but also take those as wins.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while to get there, and then I realized the importance of reframing it because of everything I went through. Like, I went through really, like, the lowest of lows, and just dealing with, like, I don't know what I want to do with my future, and really thinking about all those things, and then being able to overcome that. I'm like, well, now I need to share this because I know there's so many other people that have gone through the exact same thing. So the more, to me, like, anything that I've gone through in my life and I've been able to heal through, whether it's, like, bullying for being a young girl into sports, or it's like the struggle of, leaving a sport and not achieving those goals. Like, how can I share that with other people? Because I know anybody on earth has like fallen short of something, has failed at something, has been judged for something. So I think it's important once you get to that place, if you're able to go back and share and help others. And for a few years, I wasn't in that place at all. I was still, kind of dealing with it in the moment, but feel good now to be kind of more vulnerable and open up and share about those things. I think more of an athlete than an entertainer, but I think like now, especially the way I view athletes in general, is I do understand, like just from the work that I do, that there's like that brand side and there's the content creation side where even if you look at like esports, the reason esports are growing so fast is because inherently they're creating content around everything that they do. So they are entertainers and they are part of the entertainment industry, and that's something I think I've shared. I know in like some different things where sports are part of the entertainment industry. And so I have been realizing that more and more where, we wouldn't even have an opportunity to compete and make money or do anything in any sport if you aren't getting some sort of entertainment value to the crowd or whatever it is. And something I recognized as an athlete, even seeing what the governing bodies would do where, for example, they wouldn't change the weather, would be horrible. We'd be as athletes and coaches having meetings saying we need to move this competition, it's not safe. And we have a TV schedule, like we can't do that. So you start to realize that it is an entertainment industry, but at the same time I think you are an athlete. Like there's different types of entertainers, there's actors, musicians, and then there's the athlete side.
And you were talking about Olympics, but ain't you guys like interested more into the X Games?
Somewhat, yeah. Like, I guess it depends what athlete you ask. Like, for example, I started off playing so many traditional sports as a kid that when I was 3 years old, I told my parents I wanted to go to the Olympics. And so that was like my thing. And then I think I when I switched to snowboarding, in my early teens from hockey, then it was like, okay, maybe there is no Olympics here yet. So then X Games kind of became that goal. Then Olympics came back. So for me, I was like, oh yes, Olympics. But there was a lot of athletes around me who, maybe their parents were like, oh, that's so cool. You have the Olympic opportunity. But X Games was probably their main goal. And there's less people. Like, I think it's only maybe 25 girls or something like that get to go to the Olympics. But in X Games, sometimes it's as low as like they invite 8 girls sometimes, which is like super exclusive. Yeah, so even less, like sometimes people ask, like, Olympics is that top one. I'm like, X Games is much harder to get into. Yeah, well, my top memory would be in snowboarding. I mean, there's so many memories, like playing hockey as a kid. I think the other day I was scrolling through my TikTok and I saw a kid do like a trend called like rare aesthetics. So he was like showing pictures with the sound of like, like different scenes. And you were saying like it brings back memories is the idea. And it was memories of like, a rink at 6 a.m. and then like your parents packing your bags. And I was like, oh, that is like exactly the memories that I remember from my whole childhood. Like hockey really dictated my childhood. The rink that was near our house, whenever my parents said we're going home, I said, which home? Like the rink or home? Because we literally, like, my brother played hockey too, so we spent all our weekends, like all our nights at the hockey rink. We were just like eat KD and then go to the rink and run. But I think if I had to pick like one key moment, it would be kind of the moment that allowed me to even then get chosen for the junior national team when that first came around and everything, which was basically my first big competition win, which also was like one of my only big competition wins, because all of a sudden I get onto like the national team program and I'm competing at World Cups and World Championships against the best in the world, and being, younger and just coming up, you're not really winning those events. So this event was basically the year before. I always had this Cinderella story in my head as a kid. I'd think I'm going to show up at a competition and just win and like all of a sudden be the best. Like that was just like this thing in my head. So I went to this competition and I came like dead last. I probably fell on all my runs. I don't even remember if I fell or like if I just was bad. And like there was like pro snowboarders there that I really respected, and I was just so embarrassed. My mom was making me take pictures with them because she was like, I see you have their posters on your wall. And I'm like, oh, this is so embarrassing. So I was like 16 at the time, so I just remember crying, and I said in my head, I was like, next year I'm going to win. So the year after was my last year of high school, I remember this was going to be the last competition of the season for me, and this is only like kind of 2 years into competing, really. I ended up graduating high school a semester early so I could start competing and working and traveling a little bit. Went out west and ended up breaking my tailbone, and this is 2 weeks before this competition. So I get on the plane, very painful, come back, realize there's nothing you can really do to heal a tailbone. So I just kept riding. It was very painful. And then I end up going to this competition and end up laying down, like I learned a new trick when I was out west, and laying down like the run of my life until that moment. And when I landed it, I just knew, like having seen everyone else's runs, like I would win this competition with this run. And my brother had been skiing along the side of the run. And this was actually at Tremblant, where like I literally filmed that video the other day. So it just brings back a lot of memories of that like one run always. And he was riding down. When I landed the second jump, which just ends the course, he just like hugged me. And he's like, we have a very like a very sibling type relationship where we just fight and argue and tease each other. And so for him to like just be so proud of me in that moment, and then I felt like out of body standing on the podium. We called my mom. She wasn't able to be there, but my dad and my brother were there, and we were calling her to tell her that I won and all these different things. And then I get to go to California with a paid trip because I won, and I got prize money and a huge like novelty check and everything, and beat like these pro snowboarders that were on my wall. So it was kind of like that moment. And to this day, like I can visualize the whole run in my head because I'm just in such a state of flow. And I think like forever I'll just be like chasing that feeling and that moment because it was like the best. Yeah, you know what? And that was actually really special too, because my parents were actually so proud. I remember they emailed, because I had like the best way to fundraise for events is like to hit up all your family. So I had an email chain like with my grandma, my aunt, my parents, and been like, hey, this is like the donation for the mental health associations if you want to donate for the ski I'm doing. And so then I remember my dad responded, and he was just like told everyone about how my brother joined me at the end. And it was so funny because going into it, my dad's like, why are you doing this? This is so crazy. What a stupid idea. You're going to do 100K ski. You've never skied over 15K. But then throughout, my dad was tracking me on Strava and like watching the whole thing and sending me, he would call me whenever he see that I stopped. because he knew like I was back in my car getting a drink or getting some food. He would check in. And then I think it was my brother was at their house. He has like a trailer that he's working on in their garage. And I think they told him like, hey, you should join Nat and help her at the end. So then my brother called me and told me, and my parents already knew. So I knew, and they sent him with like some snacks as well and different things to bring me. And yeah, that was really special too, because I really needed him in that moment, because I had just, like, I was pretty much dead by that point, but also it was getting pitch black, and like skiing through the forest at night in pitch black, it just felt like scary. I'm like scared of the dark. So it was good to have him with me at the end. So yeah, you know what? He comes in clutch when it matters.
I love that. So how did you, talk a little bit more
about that. That video about you just... like, I want to cry. I want to cry.
Oh yeah. He was videoing me. He's like, what do you want to do when you get home? I'm like, cry. And he's like asking me more questions. He's like, so when you get home, like, what are you going to do? I'm like, cry. Yeah. And then when, you know what, we didn't even have time much to celebrate or anything after, because there's a curfew here in Quebec. So he had to like hustle back over to the Ontario side and get home. And then I drove up to my house, which is only 400 meters up the road. And I had pizza and actually, I didn't cry till the next day. The next day I got so moody because I was so exhausted mentally that I cried like all the next afternoon. But I was still high on energy for like 24 hours after.
I remember seeing your Whoop score, and it was like 3% recovery.
Oh my gosh, yes. It was so bad. It was just like, I didn't even want to look at it. And I think I maxed out almost like the strain. Like actually, so no one has ever gotten a pure 22, I think, or is it 21 Whoop score, like the max. They say like you actually can't go to the exact max, because I was at 20 point something, like within a, like before halfway through the day. And then it just like hardly ever went up from there, because it just like, it can't really go that far. There's another day last summer that I got almost that high too, and it was so crazy. And I woke up like so beat up, like everything was inflamed. My feet were swollen for days. It was a rough week.
So what inspired you to do this, for those that are listening and might not know about your 100-kilometer trek?
Yeah, so, well, last fall, my boyfriend and I, we went out west on a road trip, and we were listening to a ton of podcasts on the way, and we listened to a lot of, like, people who did these crazy endurance challenges, and it's always been something that, like, I've just been attracted to, but I'm not an endurance athlete, like, very far from it. In CrossFit, my strengths are entirely power and speed and strength. Everyone, like, laughs at me because they know that I will, like, burn out very quickly. Anything, like, I have really good times at really short workouts or, like, max lifts, but anything long is just not good for me. But so I just had in this mind, I was like, okay, well, like running is just not really my thing, like long distance, especially after snowboarding, like running is very heavy on the joints. So it's just something I try to avoid doing too much volume of. So I'm like, I'm not going to run like 100 kilometers. That just seems unnecessary. So I just try to think of like some sort of challenge I could do. And obviously mental health being a cause that's important to me, I thought I could use this and do this like as a fundraiser. And that was something too that I thought of is like, I've worked all my life to build this fitness, but like for what? I just felt like very selfish in the fact that I've only used it for my own sport or whatever. And I was like, how could I use this for something good, especially during the pandemic and times where I can't even compete or do anything. So I kind of had an idea of like, oh, I really love this sport of cross-country skiing. I had just bought skis like a couple years ago, so I got into it. I did a little bit of it as a kid, but never owned my own skis. And I was like, I'm not very good, but I know like you can just keep moving. Like I just feel like you can keep moving, like with walking, with running, you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So I had that idea going into the winter, but no idea how I can make it happen because with the pandemic lockdown rules here, like it's very strict here. So I was like, even I talked with a videographer of like, maybe we could do something where we promote it leading up, but she doesn't have cross-country skis, and to be on the trail, you have to also have skis. So there's just all these logistics, and I was like, well, how could I properly do this to like raise money and awareness and also just like do this challenge? And how can I like probably stream it? And so then all of a sudden Clubhouse came around. I thought, oh, with audio, we could do something live all day and just check in. And then one of my friends said, I'll walk 50K with you at the same time. So we said, okay, perfect. And then it took about 2 months of us just trying to look for a weather window because it was either too cold or too windy, or the trail near my house, it only gets groomed once a week. So if it's, say it gets groomed on Thursday and it snows like Monday, it's not going to be good until it gets groomed again. It would just be too slow. So that caused all these issues. So then finally we found like a good day. We just committed to it. And did the 100K ski. There was definitely times I didn't think I would finish because it actually got very warm that day. So the snow got extremely slow. Like I felt like I was just trudging through like quicksand, like I wasn't going anywhere. And so that was extremely frustrating. It got faster when my brother came, actually, because it was like the light went down, and so it got kind of icy on the layer that was so slow. But even still, he was even noticing, he's like, oh yeah, it must have been awful this afternoon because there's patches I'm just getting stuck. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I felt for like 40 kilometers in the middle, like just hell. Yeah, so I was doing it all on classic. So I know people who might be listening, if they know cross-country skiing, there's like classic skiing or there's skate skiing. Skate skiing is faster, but it's just, I could never go 100K because your heart rate is like much, much higher. It's like more of like a sprinting than a long. Yeah, it's just not really made for super long distances, although I have seen some like really good people go very far and in like half the time of what it took me. But so classic, so you're just like in the track, so you definitely need a good grooming. And then I have the skin skis, so instead of, you don't need to put wax in the middle, they just have skins. But I have to replace my skins because I showed my brother and he's like, oh my God, now your skins are like, they're all like dirty and they're like pretty short now because it just 100 kilometers was a lot for those skins, and especially being so warm, the snow was granular, so it just like wears them down. And especially like the trail that I used, it had like leaves and I was dodging dog poo and like, so you just have to like, you get like crudge on it. But every about 10K when I get back to my car, my brother gave me some like pretty expensive like liquid wax that he had, and it was like perfect for that temperature. And so I would put it on, but like it wasn't really doing much. Once it was warm, like there's nothing you can do at that point. I tried to get us like go really fast in the morning when it was fast, because then I knew like the afternoon was just going to be hard.
Wow. So tell me, there's a new question, and I know you were on a panel last time about NFT. So that's the question about NFT. So you were, is there like a moment that you would love like to have like 10 or 15 cameras just to shoot you like, and remember, oh, that like not that repetition, like just like that exact moment of love, like that, like forever. Is there like a photo out there, or just like a move out there that you did, like I don't know how you call those stuff, like 360 stuff, but is there one thing that you say, hey, I wish I had that forever?
Yes, so I can like picture it in my head right now, and there's always this fun competition. It was at the end of the season, usually right after nationals, and it was like in interior BC. So a mountain we didn't get to go to very often, and it was sponsored by Mountain Dew, and they would like pay. I remember I was so excited because I got like paid just to be there, so it didn't even matter if I won. I was like, this is awesome. I just get to like be here and have fun. And there was like they would do in the daytime, like the slopestyle, and then at the nighttime, the big air. And so they had like I think just 2 jumps, which is for slopestyle. Sometimes they have 2 jumps, sometimes they have 3 or 4. So 2 was like not that many. And the last jump, just the way it was built, and I was doing my favorite trick is like a backside 540, and just the way like sometimes it kind of pauses in the air, and you're kind of. So you're spinning, and when you take off, so if the video that you probably saw me, I was doing a backside 180. So I'm kind of like blind the whole time because I turned back to the jump. That's when you spin backside. And so it's a backside 540. So you do like a 360 and then plus that 180. So you take off blind, but you also like land blind and you land switch. But that's like my favorite trick. Like even actually this weekend I was tempted. I was like, should I try it again? It's been like 5 years. And I was like, maybe not. Yeah. I was like, maybe not. But it's because of this, like the feeling of this moment. So at this competition, the lift kind of goes over. And I can remember, like, I think it was actually just in the practice, but I did one that felt so perfect that in the air, I could like see the people on the lift and they were like cheering. And then I land and I just like landed perfectly, like no hand drag, like just everything was like so good. And I was like, oh, that felt like so good that I wish like the people on the chairlift had a camera or something. And just like everyone, yeah, that was good. And like, oh yeah, I just wish I had that moment. But actually from that trick in competition, I was at a party like at night, so I don't have like that exact moment. But I was at this party, and the skier came up to me, this like skier guy, and he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? I'm like, oh, not bad, like whatever. And he's like, so I took this picture of you today. I'm like, wait, what? And yeah, he's like into photography, so he took this picture of me doing like that trick, and so that's like the picture I use for everything always, because it's like the only really good like jump shot that I really have. But I wish like I had a video of that one. And my mom is like a huge scaredy cat, like she's scared of everything. Like she wouldn't let us out at night like past a certain time. And like, to be fair, she's from Venezuela, which is like the murder capital of the world, so she's probably seen crazy stuff, which is probably why she didn't let us out. And I'd always say, well, Canada's super safe. You should let us out at night. She's like, no. But she was like, kind of like that, like very like cautious with us. We weren't allowed to like really go out and party and do things. And so yeah, snowboarding. And then my brother my brother goes ice climbing, like ice rock climbing. Like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, he's crazy. And I'm like, my poor mom, like she's been through a lot. I'm just, my dad, I think he's like less scared, but my mom definitely, I'm like, oh, she probably has heart attacks. But snowboarding has such an element of fear. Like we work with sports psychologists. Yeah, like I was scared, and I felt like working with sports psychologists, actually, most of them didn't understand. They came from a traditional sport background, and they would say, oh, are you scared of like not performing? I'm like, no, I'm scared of catching my edge and then dying. And they're like, oh, like that doesn't, in hockey, you're not worried that you like could die or you could get a really serious injury. It's probably not in your head. But for me, like that's the biggest thing in my head at all times is like, I've seen people get injured, and it was actually a big part of me stepping away from the sport was that, Bianca, maybe you appreciate this, but in the Drive to Survive, they said like the minute a driver has fear in their head, like you have to retire. Honestly, that's a big part of why I had to step away from the sport. Like all of a sudden in my last season, I was making excuses like, oh no, I have like this minor injury that usually I'd ride through. I need to go down to physio. I don't want to do this trick again. I just hit my head, like all these things. But really what happened is there's a lot of fear. And I saw a lot of people close to me have really severe injuries and, be in the hospital getting blood pumped out of their lungs and things like that. And it just really hit me that, like, I can't do this to my family. I have other things I'm also passionate about. That, like, if I did this, like, I couldn't do all of those other things if I got injured doing this. And so it was a big part of that decision. And, yeah, fear is... It's hard. You have to really overcome it because you can't, you can't ride through it.
So hold up. A common misconception that I am very passionate about is there are actually more concussions in women's hockey than in men's.
Oh, that's a good stat to know, actually.
Yes, because we aren't... So I played boys hockey up until I was 14 years old, and that was when checking was still allowed. Now they do it at like 16, 17 because boys. And I was very fortunate that I had this experience because I was able to learn about my body adjustment. Now girls are starting girls hockey at, 4, 5, 6, and they're not as having to be aware of where their head is at all times. So there's more concussions. I've actually suffered 3 majors, and one of them was because my head was down.
Yeah, I've had more concussions in hockey than snowboarding. So I would actually agree. Yeah, like I used to, so I was kind of like an ass when I played hockey. Not an ass, but like I was small, like, but I was just like, I was tough. Like I would be.
You were gritty.
Like,
you were in the corners.
That's it. That's exactly. I was in the corners, and I would drive people crazy because I would get my butt in the goalie's face, like, and I was also like one of the top scorers, so the other teams just hated me because I was like not just like scoring, but also just being annoying, like a pest, but like a good pest, like like with good sportsmanship. And there was a time where the game ended. The other team had already won, but this girl, I was skating backward or like the other way, back towards my goalie, she thought I had tripped her, and she skated all the way from her, like, the top of her circle, charging at me, and I turned around, and she knocked me out, basically, at center ice once I had turned around, and I was just, like, knocked out, like, in the middle of the rink. After the game had ended, she had already won, the whistle had gone, they didn't even give her, like, a penalty, and I was, like, my whole team was so mad, my parents were like, what the heck? Yeah, like, there's, like, crazy stuff happens, and I was probably, like, 12, like.
Yeah, so Dom, this is what I will say, because I have a mother who is just like Natalie, is an absolute scaredy cat. She wouldn't even show up to my games when I got to checking because she was just like, I've run to the other side of the bench before. I don't want to do it ever again. I was like that 6-year-old that had been like hit twice and was like, I'm dead, but I was actually fine. So I think as a parent, and then I pole vaulted, right? Where you're like flying through the air, you can fall back, you don't have padding. To Natalie's with moment of when you watch someone have an injury that gives you that, check engine moment in yourself.
Yeah.
Of just like, is this worth it for myself? And I think that is actually truthfully, and something I love to talk about with athletes, is the purest thing that you can do is look at the sport and how it benefits you. And then Natalie, to your point earlier, going out and doing this 100 kilometers was using your athleticism for something outside of yourself. I think that that's what kind of happens when athletes see those moments, is seeing how their families can be impacted. So as what my mom says always as a parent of athletes that just did crazy things, and my sister rode a bicycle in college and got a major concussion. And so she was just like, you all should be, and that's why I joke about bubbles, because she's like, all of my kids should be in bubbles. But I think it's part of being a parent and nurturing good athleticism and nurturing good sportsmanship and just acknowledging that every sport is dangerous. But I mean, same thing in basketball, people get all of these kind of crazy injuries. I mean, don't remind me of the time a guy's leg or bone shot out of his shin.
Yeah. Oh.
Put her in. No, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. But what I will say is, Natalie, and I have a question for you, like, especially when you're starting to train at a higher level, there are a lot of conversations about body health. And not only just about, day-to-day, what you intake in your body, but listening to it as a whole and understanding your body as you're both competing and as you're training. So that's something that I'm really optimistic for, women and men, in terms of just the understanding of seeing yourself as a head-to-toe athlete. And, also sports psychologist. I wish I had a sports psychologist growing up. That was just, it's such a beautiful thing that individuals now have the opportunity to really engage with. But I think, as a parent, of course, there's always going to be that fear. But Natalie, were you also kind of privy to these conversations around body awareness, body health, injury, things like that during your training?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, when I grew up, I actually had, like, no coach. It was all of a sudden I got chosen for the junior national team, and I was like, oh my gosh, my parents and I had to interview coaches and, like, realized we had to hire, because where I live, like, there's no big mountains, so I kind of taught myself. And then actually when I actually got and hired a coach, I moved down to near the Toronto region, worked with this coach, and I actually had to rebuild. I spent an entire season like learning how to properly turn, learning how to properly approach rails, learning how to properly take off a jump. He wouldn't let me try any like new tricks really, which was frustrating, especially as a 17-year-old. You just had all this success and you're like, I can't like continue that. But he's like, no, you could get hurt, if you're not doing things properly, or it will limit your success, or especially snowboarding is judged on style as well. So he's like, I want to teach you really good style so that you have like the best style out there. Like, that's what I think is kind of fun still about snowboarding for me, is even though I don't do the best tricks I used to do, as long as I'm like, oh, if I can just do these and make them look really cool, like people will still think it's like cool and it'll feel really cool. So I was like, style is like super important in snowboarding. So I'm like, okay, like just let me have the best style on this tricks that I won't hurt myself. But yeah, I was lucky to have some of those conversations on the rebuild phase when I got a coach finally.
100%.
Well, thank you. As someone commented, and they said, I think you will have way more followers if you keep posting snowboarding. And I was like, well, the season is over and I'm a washed up retired snowboarder, so you're not getting too much more. And they were like, no, like, because I was like, I only have these two tricks now. If you want to see me do these two tricks at different places, maybe. So maybe next season I'll try to get out there more and film some stuff again, but it's probably not going to be the core of my content.